We come back, we have Janine Hubbard to talk about dopamine gambling and the Surgeon General of the United States' most recent recommendation on social media. All of that coming up after the break. Well, credit to the Saltwire and the Telegram in particular. Over the last few days, they've been running different stories about challenges people have been having around gambling addictions. Not unlike other addictions, these are tough and crippling for the people that are directly impacted and all of the families that try to help and provide support. Wanted to get Dr. Janine Hubbard on, a favorite of ours on this program. She explains her profession in psychology so well to talk about one of the things that I saw in the coverage of all of this. And Janine, how are you doing today?
I'm grand. How about yourself?
Oh, there we go. I just had a technique. You're good. We got you back from Ottawa. Janine, one of the things that I saw, I can hear you. Yeah, all good. One of the things that I saw in the Saltwire stories was the impact that dopamine has for people who are dealing with gambling addictions. Can you take us through how that all works?
Sure. And I think it really is important to remember that a gambling addiction is very similar in many ways to any of the addictions. It's a way of either seeking pleasure or avoiding painful things or seeking out kind of a numbing experience. And so what happens for all of these is dopamine is one of the many transmitters we have floating around, kind of forming connections between parts of our brain. It's kind of like a messenger running around, passing on all the messages and connecting different things. What happens is dopamine is involved in a lot of things, but yes, it definitely has a bit of a hit when we feel good, when something exciting happens. And that could be almost anything. We have a lovely meal, we have a great concert, something makes us feel good. But the important part is that dopamine is also associated with our memory systems, so that not only do we feel good in the moment, the dopamine then makes sure that we encode that lovely sensation with the memory of what just happened, so that we are far more likely to kind of go, oh, I really liked how that felt. I want to do that again.
And is that more acute for people who are dealing with gambling addictions, or is that common in other addictions as well? Are there common patterns there?
Oh, absolutely. There's common patterns for all addictions. And that, again, some of that, that felt good. I want to do it again. My brain remembers that felt good. We see that in a whole variety of situations, for sure. And the other thing that's a bit of a chicken and egg is we also see particularly in gambling addictions, but in a lot of other addictions as well, there are some underlying conditions such as depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, that are felt to sort of have underwhelming levels of dopamine in the brain to begin with. So they're looking for that hit. They're looking for that stimulation, so that certainly you can see the cause and effect. If you are really caught up in a gambling addiction, the depression can be something that develops, but it also can be part and parcel of a whole lot of other conditions.
Now, let's just stick for gambling for one more question, because I do see the connection between this and what happens with social media. For people who may be listening today who are struggling or are uncertain if they're struggling, where can they find help for gambling addiction in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Well, remembering that gambling and addiction is an addiction like any others. Any of your Doorways clinics can help get you started. The community mental health programs across the province generally have an addictions counselor associated with them. There are lots of self-help support groups out there. There are and again, when in doubt, go to Bridge the Gap. You can see some of the supports that are available that way. Reach out to your family physician. Honestly, acknowledging that maybe this has gotten out of control. Very, very first step with gambling. That also then can include therapy. It may include some medication to treat underlying other issues. And it may also involve speaking with a financial consultant or really trying to look at financial affairs.
And again, I want to credit, and I think you and I share a similar view on this, Saltwire in this case is bringing more of the story to life and the challenges that people have. And I think that's a good thing and a positive thing. And I think the more we talk about this and have experts like you on to do that, helps address it. One of the things, Janine, though, that struck me last week, and we didn't have the chance to talk because you were here in Ottawa at the CPA, Canadian Psychological Association conference, but I imagine in the halls, if you weren't talking about it on the main plenary sessions, this was on the tongues of many. And this is the Surgeon General in the United States who came out last week and said there should be warning labels like there are on cigarettes for people who use social media, particularly young people. What's your reaction to that?
It's interesting because certainly I have spoken in the past about exactly the dopamine connection with things like social media, like look at the number of likes or comments or hearts that I'm getting. I know Instagram was one of the ones that tried to look at some of their algorithms because we do know that gets really reinforcing. And what we saw was certainly the types of posts that people would make, they'd often become riskier or more sexualized in young, teens, because those are the ones that got the attention. Again, especially for young people, they think that there is still a bit of invincibility and vulnerability that won't happen to me. I'm not sure warning labels are the most effective way. I'm a big fan, and I've spoken a lot about this, about education, about teaching safe practices, teaching an understanding and awareness of what's going on right from a very early age. Some of that is getting parents up to speed, but teaching safe use in the same way that we don't just hand kids, here's the car and the car keys, go drive. We work on gradually exposing and teaching and learning the dangers and learning the benefits. So kind of a gradual thing would be my 2 cents worth.
Okay.
But if I can, for 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure, because with gambling, like any other addiction, there is a tendency to not appreciate it as a mental health disorder, and there is a tendency to have a lot of stigma and a lot of judgment that, they're just lacking in willpower. Yeah. So I really want to emphasize that, look, yes, there are some people who are more vulnerable to having it get out of control, but the reality is if the perfect storm of life circumstances happens, any of us are vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. Just before I let you go, I want to bridge back, and we just have about a minute on it. Could warnings, though, be a useful step if we brought them in here or elsewhere, along with everything else that you've talked about?
I guess I'd have to see how and in what way they are demonstrating it. I'd be far more useful, kind of like we're seeing, say, on X these days, with a little qualifier that says, here's some additional information about this story, perhaps some information that requires this story. This was created using photo editing or filters or that kind of information, I think would be far more useful.
Okay, well, we will watch it because what's out there is not enough right now. And as you say, monitoring, engaging with our children or other people who are intently using this is an important thing to do. Janine, as always, thank you for your time. You make it easier to understand some of these dilemmas we're dealing with. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for attention to the topic.